They would literally pluck out your still pulsating heart.
I took every possible literature from Central American archaeologists to learn what's this all about.
For generations, the Aztecs have been remembered as warriors, visionaries, and builders of one of the greatest civilizations in the Americas. Their temples touched the clouds, their cities pulsed with life, and their empire stretched farther than any had before it. But what if everything we thought we knew about them, their origin, their lineage, even who they really were, was wrong? Recent DNA research has shattered centuries of certainty. Beneath the stones of ancient temples and the soil of forgotten burial grounds, scientists have found genetic traces that tell a story darker, stranger, and far more complex than anything written in the chronicles of conquest. When the first bone fragments were tested, the data didn't fit the legend. The results exposed a hidden chapter of human history, one that suggested the Aztec Empire may not have merely conquered, it may have replaced. In 2024, a team of geneticists working in collaboration with archaeologists from the University of Texas analyzed mitochondrial DNA taken from burial sites once belonging to the twin cities of Tlatelolco and Tenochtitlan, the beating heart of the empire. They expected to trace a familiar lineage, confirming that the Aztecs were descendants of northern migrants known as the Mexica. Instead, they uncovered genetic fingerprints that didn't belong to any known local ancestry. The data pointed to massive population shifts, entire genetic lineages vanishing, replaced by new ones appearing seemingly overnight. Historians have long debated how the Aztecs rose so fast and dominated so completely. The traditional narrative spoke of strategy, warfare, and tribute, but DNA now hints at something deeper, a deliberate transformation at the biological level, a kind of demographic engineering that turned whole cities into genetic mosaics. It began, scientists believe, long before the Spanish ever arrived. Each new excavation reveals patterns of genetic replacement so consistent that they defy coincidence. Beneath the grandeur of the Aztec capital lies the evidence of a civilization built not just on conquest, but on the reshaping of peoples themselves. To grasp the scale of what's been uncovered, we have to follow the trail of DNA back through the empire heartlands, to cities that vanished without explanation, to populations erased from history, and to genetic codes that whisper of something the Aztecs worked very hard to hide. This isn't just about rewriting a few pages of history. It is about uncovering what may have been one of the most systematic acts of population replacement ever orchestrated in the ancient world. And as we'll see next, the first clues came from a city that disappeared almost overnight, leaving behind only bones, and the secrets locked inside them. Not far from the Aztec capital, there once stood a thriving city called Xaltocan, home to a people known as the Otomi. They were builders, traders, and craftsmen who had lived in the Valley of Mexico long before the first Aztecs stepped onto its shores. For centuries, they shaped their own destiny, creating art, language, and culture distinct from all others. Then one day they vanished. No wars were recorded, no disasters described. It was as if the earth had quietly swallowed them whole. For generations, scholars assumed the Otomi had simply merged into the growing Aztec Empire. Some suggested they had migrated elsewhere to escape conflict. But when archaeologists began collecting bone fragments from Xaltocan's ruins and sent them for DNA sequencing, the results painted a picture far darker than peaceful assimilation. The genetic samples taken from burials before the Aztec conquest contained clear, consistent markers, the unmistakable genetic fingerprint of the Otomi people. Yet the samples taken after the conquest told a completely different story. Those original genetic signatures were gone, replaced by entirely new ones that matched groups living hundreds of miles away. It was not a slow blending of families over generations. It was an abrupt, almost surgical replacement. The old bloodline had vanished, erased from the record at the biological level. To scientists, this wasn't just cultural domination. It was demographic transformation, a massive shift that could only have happened through forced population movement, displacement, or worse. And Xaltocan was not alone. As researchers tested DNA from surrounding cities, places that had once been independent centers of trade and power, the same pattern appeared again and again. Distinct regional lineages gone, replaced by genetic markers from the Aztec core. It was as if each conquered city became a blank slate for a new genetic design, and the further archaeologists looked, the more unsettling the pattern became. Entire regions showed signs of population turnover within a single human lifetime. No natural migration could explain such rapid change. This discovery has forced historians to rethink what conquest really meant under Aztec rule. It wasn't just soldiers marching into cities and banners being raised. It was the quiet, invisible rewriting of entire peoples, a biological conquest unfolding over decades, buried beneath layers of stone and time. And what is most haunting is that the genetic evidence doesn't show where the displaced went. Their DNA simply disappears from the record. No trace in neighboring regions, no survival through intermarriage, no echo in the genomes of modern descendants. It's as if they were systematically removed from existence. Every bone, every sequence, every missing marker tells part of a chilling truth, that the Empire's strength may have come not from unity, but from replacement. If discoveries like this fascinate you as much as they unsettle you, subscribe to the Forgotten Depths to keep uncovering the hidden histories buried beneath the world we thought we knew. When scientists first compared the DNA from Aztec-controlled regions, they expected to find small differences, perhaps traces of trade or intermarriage. What they uncovered instead looked more like the aftermath of a biological war. Across the Valley of Mexico, from the temples of Tlatelolco to the outskirts of Cholula, the genetic record showed the same unsettling pattern. Distinct populations wiped clean and replaced by entirely new ones. The replacements weren't just people from nearby regions. They came from distant corners of the empire, hundreds of miles away. Populations that had once been isolated suddenly shared nearly identical genetic markers, as though someone had carefully redrawn the map of human ancestry. The scale of this transformation defied everything archaeologists thought they knew about ancient societies. Researchers began calling it the genetic battlefield, not because weapons were found, but because the DNA itself carried the scars of conquest. Each genome told a story of displacement, disappearance, and deliberate restructuring. The Aztec expansion, it seemed, had rewritten not just politics and culture, but biology itself. The University of Texas team behind the breakthrough described it as demographic replacement on an unprecedented scale. What they meant was that the Aztecs didn't merely conquer people, they moved them. Entire families, towns, and regions were uprooted, transported, and resettled, while the native inhabitants of those lands were erased from the genetic record. Some researchers use the term genetic colonization, and it fits disturbingly well. The empire didn't just spread outward, it replicated itself through people. As cities fell, new populations loyal to the Aztec capital took their place, their bloodlines ensuring that the empire's reach wasn't just political, but biological. But what could drive such a drastic policy? Ancient records hint at the answer. The Aztecs saw their empire not just as a realm of land and tribute, but as a sacred reflection of cosmic order. Every conquered people, every captured city had to be absorbed into that order, purified, realigned, reborn under the symbols of Tenochtitlan. To the rulers, replacing populations may have been more than strategy. It may have been ritual. As more samples were analyzed, the same genetic patterns appeared in city after city: Teotihuacan, Texcoco, Cuautitlan, all showing signs of sudden population shifts. And yet, nowhere in the written codices or surviving records do the Aztecs speak of such sweeping movements. The silence is deafening. Perhaps they didn't see it as cruelty, but as creation. By shaping who lived where and who would bear whose children, they were shaping destiny itself. The DNA that survives today is the echo of that ambition, the biological shadow of an empire that saw life itself as a tool of power. The deeper researchers dig, the clearer it becomes. The Aztec conquest wasn't only about temples, tributes, or wars. It was a campaign to redesign the genetic landscape of an entire civilization. But the mystery goes even further, because when scientists traced those foreign genetic markers back to their point of origin, they discovered something no one expected: proof that the Aztecs' own beginnings may not have been what history claims. For centuries, Aztec legend spoke of a mythical homeland called Aztlan, a place of shimmering waters and white herons said to lie far to the north. According to the stories, the Mexica people left Aztlan under divine command, guided by their god Huitzilopochtli, until they found the sign of an eagle perched on a cactus, the symbol that led them to build Tenochtitlan. Historians dismissed much of this as mythology, a poetic origin tale meant to unite an empire. But the latest DNA findings suggest that the truth may have been far stranger and far more real than anyone imagined. When scientists traced the newly discovered genetic lineages found in central Mexico back through time, the trail didn't stop in nearby regions. It stretched northward, hundreds, even thousands of miles, into areas that today make up the American Southwest. Genetic markers identical to those in ancient Aztec remains were found in populations once living near the deserts of modern-day Arizona, New Mexico, and beyond. This meant one thing: the Aztecs' ancestors weren't local to the Valley of Mexico at all. They had migrated vast distances, likely over generations, carrying with them stories that became the legends of Aztlan. But what truly shocked researchers was what happened after they arrived. The genetic evidence shows that the Aztecs' migration didn't end when they built their empire. Distinct Y chromosome and mitochondrial haplogroups, genetic identifiers passed through fathers and mothers, began appearing across multiple Aztec sites almost simultaneously. Scientists identified entire clusters of genetic patterns, labeled with terms like QMEH2, QM3, and QZ780, all showing signs of sudden, large-scale movement. These weren't small family migrations, they were massive waves of people. Archaeologists describe it as an organized population transfer. Villages didn't just expand, they relocated. Entire groups moved from one end of the empire to another, carrying their gods, their dialects, and their bloodlines into new territories. To some researchers, it looks less like spontaneous settlement and more like state planning, a deliberate redistribution of people designed to strengthen control over conquered lands. But if this was a plan, it came at a heavy cost. The places these new populations entered, the old Otomi and Tepanec cities, lost their genetic continuity. The DNA shows that local lineages collapsed as northern groups arrived in overwhelming numbers. Within a few decades, the genetic identity of entire regions was rewritten. Some experts have started to call this the Aztec migration engine, a social and biological system that expanded the empire while ensuring loyalty through bloodline. By moving people instead of just armies, the Aztecs may have been creating an empire that could never turn against itself. And yet, buried beneath that brilliance was something deeply unsettling. These migrations weren't peaceful pilgrimages. The speed, scale, and uniformity suggest compulsion, or worse. Whether through forced relocation, servitude, or annihilation, the Aztecs didn't just reshape borders, they reshaped humanity itself. The story of Aztlan, it seems, wasn't only a tale of beginnings, it was a blueprint, a divine justification for an empire built on movement, control, and replacement. But if the Aztecs could manipulate entire populations, what does that say about the darker side of their empire? The one written not in stone or legend, but in blood. As scientists pieced together the genetic map of the Aztec world, a grim pattern began to emerge. The empire's brilliance, its architecture, order, and reach, seemed to rest upon something far more calculated than conquest. Behind the shimmering temples and ceremonial grandeur, there was methodical control, not just over land or tribute, but over bloodlines themselves. The genetic data revealed that after the Aztecs conquered a city, its original population didn't simply blend in, it disappeared. In its place appeared people with clear genetic ties to the Aztec heartland and its allied regions. It was as if the empire had developed a quiet, systematic way of replacing entire communities. Historians once called these resettlements, but the DNA suggests something colder, something closer to genetic imperialism. Populations were uprooted and scattered across distant territories, breaking their ancestral links and diluting any chance of rebellion. The strategy was devastatingly effective. Each conquered region was repopulated with people loyal to Tenochtitlan, traders, soldiers, administrators, and their families, whose very existence reinforced Aztec control. The result wasn't just a political empire, but a biological one. And yet, the data hides a more terrifying secret. Some genetic lineages simply vanish from the record altogether. Y chromosome markers that should exist in modern descendants are gone, entire male bloodlines erased. This isn't the pattern of intermarriage or assimilation, it's the signature of extinction. Archaeologists have long known that the Aztecs practiced mass sacrifice, offerings to appease gods, to ensure rain and to sustain the sun itself. But what if these rituals were more than religious? What if they were part of a deeper process, a way to cleanse conquered populations not only symbolically, but literally? Some researchers hesitate to make that connection aloud, but the overlap between the missing lineages and regions known for heavy ritual activity is impossible to ignore. Cities that supplied victims for the great temples are the same places where genetic signatures vanish completely from the record. To the Aztecs, sacrifice wasn't just spiritual duty, it was the machinery of empire. Still, others argue this genetic void could also reflect forced relocations on an unimaginable scale. Ancient texts describe processions of thousands being marched across the empire, captives, laborers, and displaced families resettled to serve the capital's needs. Wherever they went, the DNA trail stops abruptly, suggesting that even their descendants were lost to history. The implications are chilling. Whether through annihilation, assimilation, or ritual, the Aztecs had mastered a form of population control far beyond their time. They were reshaping entire societies, crafting an empire not just of cities and soldiers, but of genomes and generations. And now, centuries later, their precision is written in our own DNA, silent proof of an empire that saw humanity as a canvas to be rewritten. But even with all these revelations, one final question remains. If the Aztecs could so effectively alter the genetic landscape of millions, what does that say about the world they inherited? And what secrets still lie buried beneath their rise to power? As more data pours in from excavations across central Mexico, one truth grows impossible to ignore. The Aztec Empire wasn't just a civilization of warriors and builders. It was an architect of humanity itself. The DNA now uncovered from bones, teeth, and soil tells a story that words alone could never hold. The empire that rose from the marshes of Lake Texcoco didn't simply rule its subjects, it rewrote them. Modern geneticists call it demographic engineering, but in the 15th century, it was something else entirely. The will of the gods made flesh. To the Aztecs, every conquest was divine order unfolding. Every displaced family, every vanished lineage, was another thread woven into the cosmic balance they believed sustained the world. Their empire wasn't built on chance or chaos. It was meticulously designed, reshaping people the way they reshaped stone, until only those loyal to the capital and its faith remained. This vision of control might explain how the Aztecs expanded so quickly and maintained dominance over millions. By redistributing populations, erasing identities, and replacing them with loyal bloodlines, they created stability through fear and devotion. Entire cultures, languages, and genetic histories wiped from existence, their voices reduced to silent echoes within our DNA. The deeper researchers look, the more they realize how deliberate it all was. Isotope analysis of food remains shows dietary patterns suddenly changing at conquered sites, suggesting new people arriving with different traditions. Even burial customs shift overnight, aligning perfectly with the genetic turnover revealed by DNA. These weren't isolated incidents, they were synchronized acts of empire. And yet, the story doesn't end with destruction, because the same DNA that exposes loss also carries survival. Within modern Mexicans today are fragments of every vanished people, every displaced tribe, every life absorbed into the empire's design. The Aztec story still beats inside their blood, a reminder that history as shadows never truly fade, they only change form. For scientists, these discoveries mark a turning point. Ancient DNA has become a time machine, capable of resurrecting truths buried for centuries. What once seemed like myth, the migrations from Aztlan, the disappearances of cities, the grand reorganizing of populations, now stands revealed as fact written in our very cells. It's forcing historians to rethink what it means to build a civilization, because the Aztecs didn't just forge an empire, They engineered humanity itself. So, as the final bones are tested and the last genomes decoded, we were left with a haunting realization. The Aztec Empire didn't merely fall beneath Spanish swords. It endures in us, in every strand of DNA that carries their legacy of power, creation, and control. If this story made you question what else might be buried beneath the sands of time, don't look away. There are still countless mysteries whispering from the forgotten corners of our past. Subscribe to Forgotten Depths, and join me as we keep unearthing the truths that history tried to hide. The deeper we dig, the stranger it gets.